Good morning, everyone. I hope you all had a good night and a good rest. I'm going to be talking about my 5-step Shine Trauma Release program. And I'm going to start this with a quote from a client that I've taken through this process, which is the book about. And the way she described the hypnosis and the healing journey was doctors can save a physical life, but it is a very rare person who can save a mind and make a person want to live again. And this was her journey in this book through hypnosis, through the 5-step Shine Trauma Release program. This is Conny Wladkowski. I'm a hypnotherapist, international speaker, and author. And I specialize in anxiety and in trauma relief, specific trauma relief without regression. And there's a reason why I'm so passionate about this topic. Because as a little girl, I experienced trauma myself, and that affected me in every area of my life. I had no self-belief, I had no confidence, I had no friends growing up, I was always alone. And on top of that, I was suffering from anxiety. And as I got older, the anxiety got worse to the point where life for me was just surviving. It was just getting by day. And of course, that's not how I wanted to live life. I wanted to have friends. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to enjoy life. I just didn't know how I would ever be able to get there. And I did go many ways of trying to heal from it. I did breathing, and I did self-help books, and I did yoga, and I did meditation, all the way up to medication. But nothing gave me that long-term relief that I really needed. I also went down the traditional therapy approach for many years, but I felt like that failed me and kind of re-traumatized me. Until I hit a point where I didn't want to live like that anymore. My firstborn was a year old at the time, and we were in Australia on holidays. We were on the beach, and I remember seeing my husband and my daughter playing in the sand, and they were laughing and having fun, and I was sitting on the side crying. I just had a panic attack. I don't even know what it was about, but that was the whole holiday. The whole holiday, I could not be present. I looked at them and I'm like, I want to be part of that. I just couldn't. And that's when I decided, okay, well, I need to try something. I need to try something else. Although it feels like I've tried everything, I need to try something else. And I tried hypnotherapy. And to me, to be honest, it felt like back then that this is my last resort. Like, if that's not going to work, I don't know what else is there. But within weeks, the anxiety got less. And within months, I had no more panic attacks. And that was such a big life-changing experience for me. That's something that was such a big problem for me. I was suddenly able to overcome. So much so that I decided then to change my career and become a hypnotherapist. And because I got a law degree, so complete opposite to it. And I decided then, okay, well, if I become a hypnotherapist and I study all of these things, I really want to specialize in anxiety and in trauma relief, because they're both things that I experienced. I can relate to what my client is going through, and I'm really interested in how I can help people with this. But at that point, I was like, yeah, I've overcome anxiety, but I still had that unresolved trauma that was weighing me down. I still had no confidence. I still had no self-belief. I wouldn't have been able to see a client. And how we heard in one of the talks from Deb yesterday, it's really important to heal yourself first. So the thing that was stopping me though from healing was that I kind of was conditioned, or I believed that the only way to heal from it is to have to talk about it over and over again, because this is what I come from. I come from the traditional approach. And that kind of stopped me. I was like, I don't want to go there again. I've been there as a child and I've been there as a teenager, and it just didn't help. And that's when I decided, all right, I want to find a better and easier way to overcome trauma, a way where you can overcome it without having to talk about it, without having to relive it. So I studied the neuroscience of the brain, did a lot of trainings with trauma experts and anxiety relief experts. And I've put everything that I've learned and everything that I've experienced myself everything that I felt like that was lacking when I was going through therapy and everything that's helped me in my 5-step Shine trauma release process. And it's a combination of a traditional but also modern hypnotic approach, a lot of neuroscience, NLP, and also a bit of coaching. And this is all about the non-regression approach. And I love how when you come to a conference like this, there's so many ways to help someone. You know, there's not just one is the right way. And today I want to introduce my way, or how I'm working with my clients. And I'm going to talk a lot about the neuroscience, why certain things are important, because I feel like often as hypnotherapists, we are trained a certain way, but maybe we don't even understand underneath, okay, why are we meant to do it this way? Why are those words so important? Why is the order of a session so important? And I'm hoping that I can share a little bit with you guys about that. So today I'm going to talk about 3 key points as well. Oh, okay, I'll just do this. All right, so I'm going to be talking about 3 key points. I'm going to talk about the 5-step Shine trauma relief program, which is the book. I'm going to talk about the use of giving clients rapid reshape tools so we can empower our clients. And so the change we're doing, they can keep doing that after the session. And I'm going to talk about the crucial role of repetition and reinforcement and how to create that by creating a hybrid program. And I am going to use, so when I talk about a client, I'm always going to refer back to that client. Okay, so I'm going to use that client as an example on how I've worked with her and how I've helped her. And by the end, I'm hoping that everyone can at least take one thing away that they can possibly implement with their next client. So let's start with key point number 1. First, let's just quickly touch on to how healing from trauma is possible without regression. So when we look at trauma, you know, people can experience big trauma, maybe abuse or rape. People can experience small trauma, that could be the loss of a job or divorce. People can experience trauma in childhood, teenage years, adulthood. It doesn't matter when it happened. Even if it happened last week, last year, last month, the neuroscience of how and why you can heal from trauma is always the same. So let's talk about client Victoria. So Victoria from the book, she's experienced abuse at her workplace. Grooming and assault was in her adulthood. Now, the amazing thing about this is that she never told me any details about the event. The whole time I worked with her, all I know, grooming and assault, and that is it. So the results out of the trauma she experienced, the effects, if you want to call it like that, was PTSD, depression, suicidal ideation, agoraphobia, to the point where she hadn't left her house in about 4 or 5 years. Now, she has been in the traditional therapy approach for about 4 years. So she's seen psychs and she's taken medication and she's seen doctors. And the way she described it to me was she felt like she was getting worse. She said she also dreaded most of her appointments because it was all about talking about it. And she clearly said she actually had not much left in her, not much will to live anymore. And the reason why she contacted me, because there was a certain appointment that she needed to attend in person, which was all about her financial survival. Because during that time, it was COVID, Melbourne was in the worst lockdown, all her appointments were online. So she didn't have to leave the house. And then her doctors kept most of her appointments online, except, you know, when she needed a GP appointment, but everything else she did online. She didn't go grocery shopping anymore. She would only check her letterbox at night because it was at the end of the driveway when she didn't have to see anyone. But her last thing was like, if I don't get that financial support, well, I can't survive anymore. So that's what she contacted me for. And when we look at the different group of people that come, you know, we have people that have experienced trauma and they might be too scared to talk about it or don't even know what happened to them. Then we might have people like Victoria, and this is most of my clients, that she's been through the traditional approach, she's talked about it, and she doesn't feel like it's helped her. So how can we help all of them? Because in that case, regression might not always be the most useful or the approach that the client wants to do anymore because they've tried it and it hasn't worked. Now, the base of all my work is the therapeutic memory reconsolidation. Who knows about the therapeutic memory reconsolidation and how it works? Hands up if anybody knows. All right, so this is something, I'm not going to go into the detail in this presentation today, but it's something I encourage you to look up because it explains in a couple of steps how healing from trauma, traumatic experience, whatever you want to call it, is possible by just working on the effects and not by the event. I'm going to do a quick sum up so we all have the same base knowledge. So when we do the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we activate the memory. Thanks. We activate the memory and it gets out of the stuck consolidated state. Because when we look at a memory is not a recorded movie of something that we replay in our mind. A memory is actually a creative process. So when we are creating a memory or when we're thinking of a memory, all these different regions from the brain are getting pulled in and they create that thing called memory. And because it's being pulled in like that, there is a time frame where the memory is malleable, where we can change that memory. And this is what we can do with the therapeutic memory reconsolidation. Now, we cannot change the event itself, but we can change the emotional track of the memory, how that memory makes us feel, how is it stored in a nervous system. Now, with Victoria, so she had panic attacks and anxiety every time she had to leave the house. She had lost contact with the outside world. And what has happened as well is that she had no one to turn to anymore. She was completely by herself. Now, of course, she comes and sees me and she says, all right, in 2 weeks, I have these financial appointments I need to attend in person. Of course, you can say, all right, I'll regress you back to the initial sensitizing event, to the grooming and the assault. Or you can just look, okay, well, what is it that's stopping you today? Why aren't you able to leave the house? Why aren't you able to attend those medical appointments? And it's the anxiety and panic attacks. Because when we use the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we can use a memory of a recent time when this has happened. So we don't have to go back to the grooming. We can just say, okay, well, when was the last time that happened? When was the last time you left the house or you had to leave the house and you had a panic attack or you felt anxious? Because it's all part of that same neural network. So we just need to activate one of them. And this is why I'm really encouraging you to read up about the therapeutic memory reconsolidation to really understand the steps. So in short, we have to access the neural network of the problem. So we have to light up that memory. Any subsequent event, any time she felt anxious. Then we need to introduce a new information. Because what's the brain predicting? The brain is predicting that every time she leaves the house, she's going to feel anxious or she's going to have a panic attack. And then we need to do something, the so-called prediction error, the mismatch in the brain. We need to scramble that up and don't give the brain what it is predicting. So, and we can do that in hypnosis. So we can be like, okay, well, how would you like to feel? Because our brain doesn't know what is real and what is imagined. So when she is in hypnosis and we get her to the state of, all right, now see yourself, let's use the pharmacy. Okay, she went to the pharmacy and she had a panic attack. So now see yourself go into the pharmacy and you're feeling confident. We can create that felt experience in hypnosis and it lights up those neural networks. Now, the key thing with the therapeutic memory reconsolidation is to create that prediction error. So the brain is predicting anxiety or panic attack, and now it's getting feeling calm or feeling confident. And that then ripples back through the entire neural network. It gets the initial sensitizing event. It gets the limiting beliefs. It gets the behaviors. Everything that is linked to that neural network gets affected when any one piece of that gestalt gets altered, as long as it's a prediction error. So to be honest, when a client comes and she's like, I have 2 weeks to overcome anxiety and to go to this appointment, I would not regress her back to the initial sensitizing event. Specifically when she's told me, I have talked about this trauma for the last 4 years. You know, that I would not use that approach. where regression, there's many times regression is amazing and I think works wonders. There's just a situation where I think it's not the right approach. And in that case, I would never regress her back. Because when I said to her, yes, I can help you and I want to work with you. And I said to her, you don't have to tell me anything about the event. She was like, she just felt like, that was the initial thing that she's like, all right, I'm feeling not so stressed and worried about the next session, because a lot of clients feel worried about their sessions. They're already on edge before they go to their session. So when we look at the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, it trickles down and it reinforms that neural network and it takes the fire away, that emotional sting from that initial sensitizing event. All right, so I'm going to talk about my SHINE trauma relief program. Now, each letter has a meaning, and every part of my process has those 4 steps from the therapeutic memory reconsolidation underneath it. So every time I do a hypnotic process, every time I start with my client, I straight away want to do those 4 steps. And it can be done in many ways. People do it through NLP, through conversation, through hypnosis, EFT, doesn't matter. The key thing is, and that's why I encourage you to look it up, is those 4 steps. So when we look at, that's right, just leave it up. So when we look at letter S, safe, that is session 1. So in session 1, I focus about getting a safe space for the client. And that was extremely important for Victoria because she never felt safe. I think the only place she felt safe was in her own bedroom with no one around. Now, as I said, the client, when they come and see me, they can tell me as much or as little as they want about the event. If a client has been in the traditional approach, I know they've talked about it over and over again anyway. And then some of them are really conditioned and that's all they want to do. Then, I'm trying to stop them in a very nice way after a couple of minutes and be like, look, we're working differently here. I hear you, but let's try a different approach. Now, there's also those clients that come and they actually say, you know what, I've never talked about it. It's almost like their black, dark secret that they've never felt safe enough to open up. Now, it might be important for them to say it. It might not. I'm going to create that safe space that they have the possibility to open up and say maybe what they've never said out loud. But again, it's not necessary. It's just about, okay, is that important for them? Now, a great way, and I feel like most of our clients just want to feel understood because a lot of them don't. And I didn't feel understood. So when I was going through the extreme anxiety and panic attacks, I felt like no one was understanding me. My husband was trying, but he's never had anxiety. Then you have all this great advice, just take a breath and relax or distract yourself. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't even describe what I'm feeling. So of course, how is anyone going to understand that hasn't experienced that? And I create that kind of rapport and understanding with my clients because I've lived through it. When I tell my clients how it felt when I had anxiety and panic attacks, their reaction is, oh my God, I feel the same way. This is exactly how I feel. And they're really like, wow, someone understands me. Now, I understand that not everyone has experienced trauma. Not everyone has experienced anxiety. But a great way of creating that with your client is to say, most of my clients feel like that. Or I've seen a lot of clients that feel the same way. I do that. Like I've never suffered from depression, but I work with a lot of people that have depression. So I'm not going to say, yeah, I know what you're going through, but I can say most of my clients feel like that, or most of my clients say that, or whatever it is. That already gives them a feeling, okay, that you have some understanding of what they're going through, because that creates that safety for them. So when we talk about the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, all we need to look at is the effects. What is the effect from the trauma? Or what is the effect? What's the thing that the client is held back by? Because a client never comes and says, heal me from trauma. They usually say, oh, I have no confidence, or I have no self-belief, or I'm suffering from anxiety or depression. It's not about the trauma, it's about what is stopping them today. Because as we just said, with the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we can clear it up just by looking at the effects. So with Victoria in session 1, all I did was work on the anxiety. did an anxiety session with hypnosis, taught us some tools, how to stop panic attacks. Didn't even talk about the trauma, nothing. We're just like, all right, let's start with the anxiety. Because, you know, once she starts feeling less anxious and she is out of that fight or flight, well, then we can start a bit of that change work. Because while someone is in fight or flight, there's no change work happening anyway. Because it doesn't allow, the brain doesn't allow the change work, then that fight or flight state. Now, in session 1, the client also gets the first experience with hypnosis. So for me, session 1, the hypnosis is quite short. I do a lot of explanation. I do a lot of teaching them the tools and making them understand what's going on. And the reason why I'm doing that short hypnosis, I mean, one, because, you know, the time frame, but the second thing as well is a lot of clients come and they might be worried that they can't visual enough, or they can't concentrate, or they might be worried they can't be hypnotized. So a very easy way to do this is I do a short hypnosis, and then the client gets a hypnosis recording from me to listen to. Now, it's not the session. I'm not recording no session. It's a recording that I've developed. It's my voice. It's my words. And that's the first thing I get them to listen to after our session. Ideally, I get them to listen to it once a day until our next session. They can listen to it at night as they fall asleep, so it requires minimum time. But by the time they come to our next session, they are so anchored to my voice. They feel so safe with my voice. Their subconscious mind feels safe with me that there's no more of this, I'm worried about being hypnotized. It just works like that. I don't even have to do a long induction because they just go into hypnosis straight away. And I feel like a lot of hypnotherapists are not using that, and we can really use that. And you don't need any crazy, I don't have any tech stuff to record. I've got a microphone that I plug in. I record the hypnosis recording, and I used to upload it on Google Drive when I didn't have an app, and I send it to them. You write it once, and it really, trust me, it's going to help you hypnotize your clients so much faster, so much easier, and so much deeper straight away. So let's sum it up. Session 1 is creating rapport, creating trust, getting them used to hypnosis, because this is the base for the rest of the session, of the rest of the work we're doing. When you have rapport and trust, and they've listened to your recording, everything else works quite easy. Session 2, letter H, healing. So in that session, I look at using the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, and what we do is we rewrite the implicit learning. And when we think of implicit learning, so anybody knows about explicit and implicit learnings, what it means? Okay, so explicit memories are conscious memories. That's when I ask you, what did you have for dinner last night? Or what did you read or watch TV last night? You consciously get that information and remember it. Now, the opposite to that is the implicit learning. And the implicit learning is something that happens unconscious, and we can't recall it intentionally. It's recalled unintentionally, and it's usually recalled by certain triggers, by certain stimuli. So that could be someone hearing a word, or someone hearing a sound or a smell, and their subconscious mind goes back to that memory bank, to that neural network, and it's like, oh, that means danger. You know how we said someone says your name like your mom, or is trying to, straight away you go into this. Now you don't do that consciously. Subconsciously, it's triggered by that stimuli. And when we look at those implicit memories, and that's extremely interesting for childhood, because those implicit memories are feelings. They are formed already in utero. So that's when we start forming our first implicit memories, because to form an explicit memory, you need to reach a certain toddler age. Before that, everything is what you feel. And this is what your brain remembers. And then a trigger happens, and it just triggers that cascade of physiological responses. So when we look at Victoria, when we look at the memories that she had, so her implicit memory is that every time she leaves the house, she feels anxious. What is her learning out of it? It's not safe to go out. It's not safe to leave the house. So let's use that sentence because I want to explain it. Let's say her implicit learning is it's not safe to leave the house. Now, with the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we can rewrite that. Because what was her solution? Her solution was to stay home. But that's not going to serve her. That's not going to make her thrive, all the way to the point where she has to leave the house now because of those appointments. So with a therapeutic memory reconsolidation, we can change that implicit learning to maybe rebuild the ability to go out so that she can go grocery shopping again, so she can attend her appointments and eventually, take part in society again. And then what I usually do, I back it up with an experience. So we did the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, and then she went grocery shopping for the first time in 4 years straight after the session. And I explain a little bit later how I do it, but it's all about, yes, we can create that new learning in hypnosis, but if we can back it up with a real life experience, the brain has that reference point. Hey, it's actually really changed. It's not just something we visualized or a feeling we created in hypnosis. Wow, it's actually something that's happening in real life. Then we got session 3, is about forgiveness. Now, at the start of the session, I always find out, okay, well, who do you feel like you want to choose to need to forgive? I'll ask them, okay, why? More like, okay, what is that person? When you think of that person, again, what feeling is coming up? I'm not interested in what, not to be rude, but it's not about what the person has done to them. It's about, okay, well, how do you feel? Because a lot of the times those people could still be in our lives. Sometimes people have been abused and yes, they never see the abuser again, but maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a family member, and they still see these people again. And I write that down because I use that information in the hypnosis. Now, I always go to, I encourage my client, I'm like, you can also put your partner in that process because, partners can annoy us with little things or our parents or whoever. Because I want them to make use out of it. It doesn't just have to be around the traumatic event. It can also be current people. And then obviously we all know self-forgiveness is very important. Now, I always ask my client how they look at forgiveness. Is that because some clients come in and they straight away say, I'm not going to forgive. I can't forgive. I will not forgive. And that's all right. I'm not going to force anyone to forgive. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to change their perspective in forgiveness because their brain, let's say if a client says they will never forgive, okay, so they come in and their brain is already predicting, forgiveness is not going to happen. I am not going to forgive. So with a change in perspective, I might even be able to create the therapeutic memory reconsolidation, the prediction error, just by changing their perspective and by them forgiving. And the way you can change their perspective is maybe I educate them about forgiveness. It's not for the other person. We're not condoning what the other person did. We're not saying it was okay. Also, with the forgiveness process I am doing with my client, they're not contacting the other person. They don't have to write a letter or a message and say, I've forgiven you. It's not about the other person. It's never about the other person. Maybe I reframe it and say, you can take your empowerment back because as long as you're holding on to resentment, you're kind of damaging yourself. So I'm going to try to lead them to be like, okay, well, maybe forgiveness is beneficial. Maybe if a client still is like, nah, not happening, I might just say, you know what, how about instead of forgiving, we're saying I'm letting go. That already makes it sometimes a bit easier. All the way to saying, you know what, why don't we just forgive the event and just leave the people out? That might be easier. And when a client comes in with the idea that they're never going to forgive because, that's their prediction, and suddenly they walk out of the session having let go or having forgiven the event or whatever, that already creates a prediction error and a huge change work for them. Now, in the hypnosis, it's a 2-part process. So I call it the room of forgiveness. And in the hypnosis, they have chairs. And on each chair, they have the people sitting that they're going to forgive. And they attend each person at a time. And the person, the people that are sitting on the chair have no mouth and have got nothing to say. So the first part is where I get my client to face the person and tell them whatever they want to tell them. Now, the client can do it out loud because for some people, it's really important that they just say it and voice it. And some people I say, you know what, do it in the privacy of your own mind. I just want the client to feel free, whatever makes them better. So first, it's about really, really, really letting go and really telling the person, what you've done, this is how it's affected me. And this is not about living in victim mentality. This is just saying things because sometimes we have people, and this is me, my mom. I love my mom. My mom's still in my life. My mom's here from Austria helping me with my kids. But there's certain things I'm not going to say to her that I think she should have done differently 40 years ago. That's going to break her, you know, especially that we have a good relationship. Now, the second person was my dad. My dad unfortunately passed away about 5 years ago. And I didn't do this work 5 years ago. So I haven't healed from trauma at that time. And I'm like, wow, I never really had that conversation with him. So that gave me the opportunity to actually have that conversation with him in hypnosis and find a little bit more peace. So they can put in whatever they want. They get everything off their chest and off their mind. And then I get them to send that thought of forgiveness. And then what I do as well after the hypnosis, I get them to write a thank you letter to each of those people. And again, it's not to give it to the people. It's just for them. And sometimes a thank you letter can be quite hard because what are you going to thank a person that abused you for? But if the client can find the meaning out of that somehow, and again, I'm not forcing anyone to do it. I'm just encouraging them to do it. But like for me, I was able to thank the person that traumatized me, that through the trauma, I'm doing this work. I would not be doing this work if I hadn't experienced what I've experienced. So that was my one sentence in the thank you letter. Thank you that I'm doing this work now. So when we can empower our client to actually find one positive thing out of it, and then you know what the client does? They've let go of the past and they're picking out the one thing that they like, the one positive thing. So that's a great way of incorporating it. But again, it's not something I force anyone to do. Then we've got session 4, which is all about releasing limiting beliefs. Now, not everyone knows what a limiting belief is. So I do tell my clients, look, next session, we're going to start working on limiting on negative beliefs. And I educate them a little bit about what a negative belief is, what a limiting belief is. Because I want them to become aware in that week, what are the limiting beliefs? And I tell them the best way to find that out is to monitor your self-talk. Because if a client comes in for the session, you're like, all right, what are your limiting beliefs? They're like, ooh, you know, they might have no idea. So I really encourage them to become aware of it. Because 2 things happen. Sometimes becoming aware of it is already solving it. And then they can come and say, well, this is my limiting belief. This is what I'm telling myself. This is what's been happening over and over again. And then we can just clear that up. And in the session, again, I use a process. But it's also sometimes just asking them, where's this belief coming from? Because, you know, a lot of our beliefs weren't ours in the first place anyway, when you look at childhood. That could be, and it's funny when they have this realization, they're like, that's what my mom always used to say, or that I can hear my dad talking. And I'm like, see, you've taken on a belief that wasn't even yours in the first place, which is already great in trying to clear it up. Before I go into the last letter, does anybody have any questions? Sorry, yeah? Oh, okay.
Will you do a personalized recording for clients?
No.
Okay. So
And I will talk about the recording still.
didn't get, what were the 4 steps per session?
The 4 steps were always the therapeutic memory reconsolidation. So it's activate the memory. Then it's stop it, you know, like maybe get the client to stand up and shake or just stop that state. Because when they get into that, when they access that neural network, they access a bit of that nervous system response. So let him in there, activate it, then I tell him stop, you know. Then create that prediction error, so create what the brain's not predicting. And then be like with Victoria, so now see yourself being at the pharmacy, because that was the example she used. But now it's different. Now you're at the pharmacy, you're feeling confident, you're feeling calm. What would happen next? She might be like, well, I go and hand my script in. And then, okay, what happens next? Well, I'm sitting there, I'm feeling calm, waiting for my prescription or whatever. And then you just loop it in a couple of times to the point where the brain, you know, takes that in and puts it in that neural network.
The last one was the thank you letter. Do you do that in hypnosis or is that a physical?
Now out of hypnosis. So I'll merge from hypnosis. And then I say, you know, it depends on how long the session's been. I might say, your homework is to write a thank you letter to everyone. Let's do one together. As in like together, I'm just sitting there, but I'm like, and then I might say, do the one for yourself now. And then I say, would you like to read it out? Again, I'm not forcing them, but sometimes it's nice when they read it out and they're like, wow, I've got so much to thank myself for. Did you have a question?
We're going to be going through some of these negative beliefs. Do you actually go through that same process with each of the steps, like let them know what we're going to do the next week?
Yes, I do it with the forgiveness as well. Like before the forgiveness session, I might say next week we're doing forgiveness. It's a bit of engaging the client. Some clients need that preparation because you can see they feel like I'm putting them on the spot and now they don't know anything. So I give them the chance, you know, if I feel like it's one of those clients, I might say next week we're going to talk about forgiveness. Just think about a few people. But the forgiveness is usually easy. People know who they want to forgive. I just feel like the limiting belief one is definitely just because it's a concept that we as hypnotherapists think everybody knows, but not everybody knows. And I feel like with anxiety clients, especially, and most of my clients have anxiety, they like to know what's going to happen. You know, and I mean, I was like that. You know, they don't like those surprises. So I try to really tell them exactly what is going to happen to not have those anxious feelings. Oh, yeah. Emma's going to hand out an email list. If you give me your email address, I won't spam you. All I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the PowerPoint. So you guys, yeah. I mean, the handout, yeah, you got, but the PowerPoint is a bit more in detail. So I'm going to send you the PowerPoint if you give me your email address. All right, let's go into the key point number 2. The letter E is empowerment. Okay, so I'm all about empowering my clients. Now, I call the tools that I use for my clients rapid reshape tools. Because what happens is most of our clients have no game plan when it comes to out of the session. So for me, the letter E is not a session itself. It carries through each and every single session. Every session, I teach my clients certain tools that they can implement straight away. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because I felt like I was lacking when I was going through therapy. You know, I might have felt better after a session, but then let's say something triggered me or suddenly maybe I had a panic attack and I didn't know what to do. So for them to have those tools empowers them, and also it creates the long-lasting change. So when we look at the rapid reshape tools, they can stop any thought, any behavior, any action and reaction. And the way it works is, let's say someone starts feeling anxious. I teach them a tool where they can stop the anxiety. And what happens is when they're being anxious, that neural network is being lit up. I'm teaching them a tool. They're putting up a roadblock, okay? And when we're putting up a roadblock and the brain can't light up this neural network, the brain has to do something different. So we are forcing the brain to detour and to light up different regions. And I'm going to use Victoria and anxiety as an example. So Victoria had panic attacks and anxiety. Now, when we look at anxiety, anxiety is something we do. It's a learned habitual behavior. And every time we do anxiety, the neural network gets lit up. Because, and the way I explain a neural network, it's neurons that are firing together over and over to a point where they are stuck together with a glue. And every time we do anxiety, that network gets stronger and stronger, to the point where it almost feels like it's happening automatic and we have no control over it, which 99% of the anxiety clients are going to say that. They're going to be like, I just feel anxious. I've got no control over it. And when you look at it, why does it feel like that? Because our brain likes the least amount of energy and effort. So if that's a strong, thick network, it's so much easier for the brain to keep doing the same thing. Now, the way we stop it is, as I said, with those rapid reshape tools. Because what happens is we use a rapid reshape tool. And when I talk about a rapid reshape tool, it could be, I don't know if you guys know bilateral stimulation, tapping, EFT, and anchor. It doesn't really matter what it is, yeah? But it's really for the client to, anytime they start feeling it, anytime that network lights up, whether it's they're thinking negative or they already have a panic attack or whatever, to put up the roadblock. Because what happens is, when we're putting up the roadblock, the brain can't go this way. The brain has to detour, and the brain has to light up different regions. And the more often we block it, and the less that old network is being used, the weaker it gets. To the point where it either is just really withered and hasn't been used, or it might even separate itself and the network might not be there anymore. But the fact is, we're creating something called the counter neuroplasticity. So we're creating a different network. And it's not about, that's just how it is. That's just brain science. You know, if we can't light up that network, the brain has to do something different. Now, the opposite is true as well. If I don't do anything about it, and I light up that network and I do anxiety, it's just making it thicker and stronger. And I tell my clients that, because I explain a little bit about the neuroscience and how this works in a very simple way. And I tell them, all right, now you have those tools. And I tell them, I'm like, if you're not using them, you're making it thicker and stronger. I want them to use the tools, you know, and I also want them to start being responsible for their own healing journey. Because before that, yeah, well, didn't have the tools. But now that you have the tools, you can decide which way it's going. And when clients understand that they use the tools, you know, that it encourages them. Because I tell them it's not about, there's no failure in using the tool 20 times. Think about it. Every time you use that tool and you stop the anxiety, it's a win. So when we look at the purposes of those tools, number one, it creates that long-term change that I just explained with the counter neuroplasticity. And number two, we're empowering our clients. I mean, it's nothing more powerful for them to leave a session and be like, all right, well, if I get triggered or if I feel anxious, I can do something. And to be honest, learning those tools was also, and maybe that's why I'm also so passionate about it, the biggest game changer for me. Because even after my first hypnosis session, when I felt a lot better, I still got triggered and I still felt anxious and I still didn't know what to do. But I know no matter what challenge comes my way, I will never spiral in a panic attack again. I use my tools still myself, like the tools that I'm teaching my clients, I still use them. Yes, back then I used them for daily panic attacks and not being able to leave the house. But now I use the tools when I travel all over the world and present. Before I get on stage or before I do a presentation or even publishing my book. That was scary. And there was many moments where I'm like, nah, I'm not going to hit submit. It's not going to happen. And I use those same tools. And I tell my clients that. I tell them, you know, those tools are not just things from a textbook that hasn't been used. And I use them. I just use them for different reasons now. Because I believe, you know, I believe in my work. So I'm doing my work myself. And I think that's really important. Now, where am I with time? Perfect. So the key components for those tools, they have to be easy. They don't take more than a minute for the clients to apply. And I teach them every week new tools because I want them to find out what works best for them. You know, we've got visual, kinesthetic, auditory people. So all of those tools have those different approaches. And then there's different tools for different, you know, situations. When we look at the bilateral stimulation, yeah, it can be done this way. I'm not going to tell someone while they're driving a car, take your hands off the wheel and start doing that. But I can teach them a way of how they can still do it. And I actually had a man sign up with me. It was about 2 years ago, and he wanted to do the firefighter examination in Australia. And one of the challenges he had to do was crawl through a really dark tunnel. Like there's no room, it was dark. And that was the thing that freaked him out and made him feel anxious. So I taught him one of my tools he can use where he didn't have the hands free, where you couldn't see anything. So that's what I want to encourage my clients to be like, okay, well, I'm teaching you those tools. Tell me what you need it for, and I help you modify it for that. Because the reason, the tool, how it works, it's just as long as you're following the principle, you can modify it to your own way. Now, I obviously just use the example of Victorian anxiety, but you can use those tools for anything, whether you want to use them for limiting beliefs, negative self-talk. Every time you're in that negative self-talk, what are you doing? You're lighting up that neural network and your brain thinks it's happening right now. You can use those tools for craving, overeating, emotional eating, stop vaping, stop smoking. It's all the same at the end of the day, all habitual behaviors in the brain. And this is what I encourage my client as well. I'm like, okay, using this tool for anxiety, but I also want you to stop your negative thoughts or use it for when you go to the pantry and you're about to grab that chocolate. You know, it doesn't matter. I think it's key to educate our clients that they can use those tools for anything else as well. So before I jump into the next point, the final one, any questions?
How come that when I just release their problem versus coming up with a new way of managing that?
Well, let's talk about anxiety. Yes, I did the session with anxiety, but doesn't mean that, you have those clients that come back after the first session and say, you know what, I never had to use the tool. I haven't felt anxious the whole week. Yes, you have those. But you also have those examples that said, you know what, I woke up and I started feeling a little bit uneasy, so I used the tool. I just want them to have those tools. And which leads me anyway into the next point. I do believe that us as hypnotherapists, we can really create change in an instant, how you explained it yesterday. But I also do believe to create a new habit in the brain, repetition and reinforcement is key. And not everyone might be that opinion, but that's what I strongly believe in. And you know what? If a client comes back and says, I never had to use the tool, awesome. They might use it for something else. Any other question? All right, so let's go into the final one. That's when I want to talk about repetition and reinforcement. So I think, or repetition is crucial for any habitual behavior. To turn something into a habit, repetition and reinforcement is key. Now, I also have this opinion. So when a client comes and sees me for whatever problem that is, whether it's anxiety or trauma or I always have this mission that I'm like, I want this to be the last thing that the client has to do in order to overcome this specific problem. And the best way to create this is by having that constant repetition and reinforcement. So when I work with a client maybe for 5-6 weeks, if they've really implemented what I've taught them, they can create a new habitual behavior in those 5-6 weeks. And they're going to walk out of that program being like, I don't have that problem anymore. And that's what I want to achieve. So when we look at our mind is like a muscle. And we have a habitual behavior that might not be, that's a negative one, that's not serving us. So we want to stop that. And at the same time, we want to create a newer, better or healthier behavior. And then we want to create a habit out of that. Because what is a habit? A habit is something that happens automatic. And when something happens automatic, there's no effort. And that's what I say to my clients. You know what? If you put in the work in those next 5 weeks, it will get easier and easier to the point where it will happen automatic, just like your old negative network happened. So when we look at repetition, when a behavior is repeated, what it means is those neurons from that neural network communicate with each other, creating that so-called neural network. Now, with each repetition, the neural network gets stronger. So the glue gets thicker and stronger. And over the time, it becomes strong and it happens automatic. Because, as I said earlier, our brain likes the least amount of energy and effort. So if it's an automatic habit, that's it. Brain doesn't have to think about it because we just said it, it works with anxiety, but it also works in a positive. Because we all have many positive habits that we are doing automatic. Now, the stronger the network, we want to get to the point where this becomes the new default network. Just like anxiety used to be the default network, we want to create that new network. So without repetition, a habit can't form, because the only way a habit forms is if those neurons communicate with each other often enough. I mean, we all know doing something once is not a habit. It's the start, but then we got to water it. We got to keep training it. So that's why repetition is key. Now, when we look at reinforcement, what is reinforcement? Reinforcement is rewarding a behavior. Because when a behavior is rewarded, I hope that's next one. Yeah. So when a behavior is rewarded, it makes it more likely to be repeated. Okay, and what is a reward? A reward can just be an internal good feeling. Or a reward can be from the outside. Someone complimenting and saying, wow, I'm proud of you. You've done really well. I've noticed. Or it could be an incentive. Because when a reinforcement happens and that feel-good feeling happens, what it does, it increases the likelihood that it will be repeated again because it felt good. And that is really crucial in the early stages when the habit hasn't been formed yet. You know, to feel good doing something makes it more likely to be repeated. And the reason why, because when we're doing something like that, when we get that reinforcement, what we are experiencing is a dopamine release. And dopamine is our feel-good chemical. So if something feels good, of course I want to do it again. So when we look at reinforcement, yes, reinforcement is not key to create a habit, how repetition was, but reinforcement speeds it up. Because when something is meaningful, enjoyable, makes us feel good, well, the chance is higher we're going to keep doing it, to the point where it then, you know, turns like into a habit. And this is why dopamine release, and also what dopamine does, it ingrains it deeper in the brain. The dopamine release just speeds up that neural network. So when we combine repetition and reinforcement, it's amazing. We're combining the two best things that our brain can do to create a new habit. So there's two ways how I create that with my clients. So first of all, I want to talk about the reinforcement. So after each session, I get my clients to do a task. Now, I don't tell them what it is. We work it out together. You know, again, I'm not saying this is what you need to do. It has to be something that relates to our session and something that is a little bit out of their comfort zone. Again, I don't want to freak them out. That's going to have the reverse effect and like, oh, I can't do it. Something that's a little bit out of their comfort zone. And what it does, it gives the client evidence that the work we're doing is working. Because it's one thing to say to a client, oh, you're going to feel more confident when you leave the house. But the client hasn't experienced it yet. The client has maybe experienced it in hypnosis and we set that stage for it. But it's different when the client actually has that evidence and it's like, oh, I left the house. And sometimes the client just needs a bit of encouragement. Now, I want my clients to have tangible results. So when I work with a client for 5 weeks, they have 5 tangible results of 5 things that they have achieved that they thought when they signed up they could never do. Now, it also creates that reference point in the brain, hey, that something has changed. And it's not just all talk. And what happens as well is usually the environment gives them a lot of reinforcement. Let's say they've done something that they thought they couldn't do, and then their husband is like, oh, wow, I can't believe you did that. You stepped out of the house, or you did this. Reinforcement, dopamine release. Then what happens is I get them to send me a message when they have done the task, because it creates accountability. You know, they're like, I said I'm going to do it. And then I send them a message, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Look how amazing you are. Here, next dopamine hit. Now, what it does, it creates excitement for the client. It creates motivation, but then it also creates belief, because you got to think about, let's look with Victoria. So she's been in a traditional approach for like 5 years, hasn't left the house. And after session 2, she's gone grocery shopping. It's like, you know, a client has done something after only 2 sessions that they haven't been able to do in the last 5 years. And you know what this creates? It creates the belief that everything else we're doing is working as well, if they just achieve one thing after such a short period of time. And then again, let's look at that. We also need to keep repeating. Just because she's gone shopping once, then I encourage her, or I make that a weekly thing, or twice a week, or whatever it is. So when we look at Victoria, the example that I use with her is in week 1, her task was to go and check the letterbox during the day. Now, to us, that doesn't sound massive. And this is why I say, I don't tell my clients what they have to do. I work it out with them. For her, that was huge. Going down that driveway in the middle of the day. So that was their first thing. And she was like, wow, I can't believe I haven't done it in years. The second one, that's the one I want to go a bit deeper in, was going shopping to Woolworths. So obviously I was like, okay, and she chose it. She's like, this is what I want to do. So I'm like, all right, well, let's work out what's a good time to go. You know, I'm not going to send her at the busiest time. I'm going to try to set her up for success. And I think that's the key thing. We have to set our clients up for success. So number 1, let's work out a good time where it's not too busy. Number 2, I said to her, write a list of 5 things to get. Because imagine she goes in there without a list. She hasn't been shopping in I don't know how many years. Write a list of 5 things. And then also, you have the bilateral simulation or whatever tool I had taught her at the time. to set you off. If you are in there and you start feeling a little bit uneasy, you have those tools. That's how we can set our client up for success. In week 3, it was attending those financial appointments that she needed to, and she managed to do it. And then in week 4, I think she went to Specsavers, got her glasses fixed, and I ended up working a lot longer with her because it was just such amazing results. She's out living again and socializing again, like, and doing everything what she's always wanted to do again. And then this is also the reason why I've written the book, because it meant a lot to both of us. And she's also written a chapter in the book and how that healing journey was from her point of view. And the last chapter is also where she's telling us where she is now 4 years later. If we want to say the long term. Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, no, sorry. Next one. Yeah. So as we said earlier, when someone does a successful task, we talked about excitement, motivation, belief, and what it does for them. But what does it in the brain? So it gives a dopamine release, and dopamine is a feel-good chemical. And if something feels good, it creates that sense of satisfaction and motivation. And it encourages the client to repeat that behavior. Because when something feels good, of course they're going to do it again. That's just a natural thing. It feels good, I want to do it again. Now, it sends a signal to the brain that this behavior is rewarding. And this is what I then said to her. Well, you've gone amazing. I'm encouraging her. I'm like, all right, go to the supermarket again, maybe in 2 days again, maybe even tomorrow, and you just buy 2 things. It's not about what you buy. It's about do it a couple of times. Because we need to really create that habit. And the habit is a lot easier to create with a dopamine release. And what it does, it creates a certain, we call it a feedback loop. So we have a behavior, in her case, going to the supermarket. It sends out that feel-good chemical. It's rewarding. So we repeat it, and it gets stronger and stronger. And with this, in a couple of weeks, we can create a new neural network. With a couple of weeks, if the clients follow that, we can create that. Now, let me just go into the final one. So I work with my clients with a hybrid approach, meaning we have the one-on-one sessions. And the second thing is they have login details to an online part of the program. Now, I have created an online part of the program in a way where each week has 4 sections. Yes. So each week has 4 sections. So there's a couple of videos about education. Then there is the so-called rapid reshape tools, the daily practice, and a hypnosis recording. And I've created an online program for all my clients. So I've done an anxiety one, which obviously specializes all of those points. There's the education focuses on anxiety. The rapid reshape tools focus on how to stop a panic attack. The hypnosis recordings that I've created. Now, they are generic recordings with my voice. They're not the client sessions, but they're like, okay, see yourself, not feeling anxious or feeling confident. So they're then for anxiety. Then I've created one for the trauma relief program. But then I've also created a general one, and I call it the Break Free Easier program. And I put all of those clients in there that don't fit into the anxiety and into the trauma. And I've got a weight loss one. But if, let's say, someone comes with, I don't know, procrastination, they go into the general one. And when I say the general one, it's all about using general tools. So there might be something for procrastination, lack of confidence. There might be something about sleep problems, or how to feel, how to feel more confident. Because at the end of the day, everybody need to feel more, everyone procrastinates at some point in their life. Everybody can create more confidence. But what this online part of the program does, it helps the client that they always have something to do. So they've got the educational videos, the rapid reshape tools. I teach them the tools in a session, but I've got about 25 tools. I don't have time to teach 25 tools because then I can't do any hypnosis. So I teach them a couple, and the other ones are in the program. Now, they're the step-by-step instructions, so they can watch it, and they can apply it. The tools that I teach them in the session, same thing. They're there. Because you know what? I don't want my client to sit there and take notes and be like, oh my God, what is she saying? Do I remember everything? I'm like, I'll show you the tool. Watch the video. You can go through it. Hypnosis recording. Each week, they get a new hypnosis recording. For the weight loss one, I have an active alert recording where they can walk and exercise while they're listening to hypnosis. I've got one where they sit down. So specific ones for specific problems. And I've got a drip function, meaning each week, a new week opens up. So automatically in 7 days, the next week opens up. They get the new resources from each week. Now they have lifetime access, login details, because at the end of the day, I'm not talking about their problem anyway. You know, it's just their problem because I want my clients to be like, if let's say a challenge comes their way in 6 months, they can be like, oh, I'll go back and rewatch a session, or I go back and listen to a recording, or I go back because I can't remember how that tool was working, or I wasn't struggling, or I wasn't thinking about procrastination, but now I am procrastinating about something, so I go back. And it really creates a lot of value for our clients because they have always something to do. They have a game plan. And what it does, it enhances the results for your clients. They listen to your voice all the time. They're anchored. They feel safe with your voice. And, you know, it also gives us the opportunity to say, hey, I am raising my price, but I'm also giving them value for it. I'm not just raising a price and that's it. I'm giving them a lot. And if I learn something new, I put it in. And they get that. You know, they get that. And you know what it does as well is it gives them the responsibility that they are responsible for their healing journey, because I can't make them log in. You know, if they don't log in, if they don't listen to the recordings, I know, by the way, because I can check it. And, you know, I've had 2 clients trying to lie to me, telling me it's not working when they haven't even logged on once, unfortunately. But the other people, they log on and they love it. And I just have amazing feedback for this online part of the program. One quick thing. I have an app, that they can log in. But before I could afford an app, all I did was I recorded the videos, uploaded them to Google Drive, had the email templates ready. So week 1, you know, all the links for the week 1 videos and the recording. And I just, after the session, hit send. So again, you don't have to have any tech experience. You don't have to spend any money. That's free. Google Drive and sending those emails is free. And if you have the template ready, you just got to press send. And as I got more clients, yes, I then bought an app and stuff. But, you know, you don't have to. And I didn't have that at the beginning either. Okay.
Can you explain? So Conny has USB.
Yeah.
What's on the USB that you can play?
So the USB stick is, I called it my client success formula, and it's videos and a few scripts of how I work with my clients from the moment, you know, they call me to what email I send to them, how I check on them, how teach them the tools and all of that. So it's all about how to create better results for your clients, how to attract more clients, how to get reviews, and how to use all that, and how to maybe even get a client to sign up with you after the session, or for them maybe to refer another client to you. Yeah, so those are the back. And if anybody wants a signed copy of my book, I would love to share it with you guys.
Well, thank you very much.